sounds highly offensive.
It is offensive.
That sounds highly offensive.
It is offensive.
I've decided to scalp you. I've decided to scalp you.
Hey!
Welcome,
everybody? Alrighty.
I'm here on time this time.
Yeah, we're all here on time.
Sacred.
Oh, make our ancestors proud. What?
We're already becoming better men.
Already on being here on time.
Yeah, there you go.
We got volume coming up. Yes, don't worry about it. I can see it. All right, so y'all, welcome to the Men's Circle of LA. The topic for today is
a Native American tribe making a deal with the government. What can go wrong?
Not exactly.
not
Not
exactly.
exactly.
What can go wrong? Okay, so it's I guess warriorhood.
Yeah.
And coming of age for men in the modern times for us folk.
So do we have coming of age ceremonies?
Yes.
What does it look like now compared to in the past? What would it look like now if we had what we had in the past now?
Right. And I guess just the theory of what is a warrior or the actual definition. But yeah, we'll hit those.
It is offensive.
Before we get there though, I wrote a little bit of a thing that I want to address for some stuff that's going on off air. For those of you that are new to the show, I apologize you have to sit through it.
Hey, Victor!
But it does need to get addressed in my opinion, and I just want to read this real quick. All right, so for those of you again, once again, my name is Surfe or Red Hawk or Art, however you know me by. Here it goes. So I want to thank you all for the time to the time. Sorry, I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch us. I assume we have many supporters watching, and we applaud your presence. I also believe that there might be other watching due to ulterior motives. Regardless, the Men's Circle podcast was created to help ourselves and hopefully through shared experiences and insight help others. One thing I can say on behalf of my brothers is we all have made mistakes. We are not perfect, and we might make more in the future because we are not perfect. What this show was built for is to have a looking glass into the male experience and show what talking about our issues looks like, and also show what the process and path of redemption and self-development look like, making it acceptable to have these convos amongst men. What I want everyone to do is think of their grandparents. Think of the stories and behaviors of their grandfather. Among the good, we shade the bad with our memories. Personally, many of these stories are rooted in alcohol abuse, physical abuse against women and children, the adultery of the generation, and how it seemed to be a staple that was widely accepted. Then I want you to think of the next generation, your parents, your uncles, your fathers. Think of the issues they had, the fighting, gangbanging, the substance abuse, the use of alcohol, the violence and hitting of women and children, the cheating, the mistreatment of women. Now think of the men today, how much of that has still stuck with the common man. Now think of the brown and red folk in the community who have tried to put these behaviors to rest. Behaviors that were passed down 500 years ago and weigh heavy on our men's hearts till this day, which lead to more toxic behavior. The generations in the past do have many things positive to pull from, but they didn't have much to look at as an example for themselves. What they saw, an example, was broken men and their colonizers or their oppressors. I don't believe the men of our past are solely to blame for the negative behaviors they might have inhibited. I bring this up because I want everyone to pay attention to the progress our people have made, the attempts to be better fathers who do not discipline with violence, who show compassion and love to their children, who support their children's needs and wants, and sets an example of what a better man looks like. I want us to look at the men who make great husbands or partners, who support their wives, listen to their needs and wants, who doesn't bring violence against their women, who supports the women emotionally, spiritually, financially, and physically. Lastly, look at the men who are solo, who have no need to express or show a good example but still choose to, because they believe it is good character that teaches good character, especially when younger men are present, the ones without a role model. Some might say the crimes of men make the bare minimum that normal men do, praise without any real merit. I say to those who believe that, you disregard the chasm of time our men endured, which undid the thousands of years our ancestors compiled to become civilized. How fast civilized men became uncivilized while under the crown of Europe. My intent is not to romanticize our ancestors, but more to highlight the accomplishments our men have made after the rise and fall of the old ones. I do believe in the day and age our men are actually striving towards greatness. My only fear is that there are not enough good men to teach the rest of the men who didn't have their opportunity. I believe this group has tools to help that cause, because without failure, there would be no growth. But also, without reflection, there would be no growth. And lastly, without accepting that we actually are imperfect, there would be no growth. Every one of us has participated in those things. So to conclude my message, I want to address this circle and podcast. Thank all of you who have impacted all of our lives and helped us see alternatives to modern problems we have, to the ones who taught us integrity, what integrity is, the ones who taught us to fight for things that are worth fighting for, to the women who support our purpose, and to the men who take the positive, something positive from our lessons we have to offer. Thank you all, and I hope you enjoy the show. Sincerely, a father, a husband, and lastly, an imperfect man. Ho.
Well said. Yeah, I want to follow that up. Kind of addressing some of the things that have been coming up in the community as of late, and some of the concerns that this is being utilized as a platform to escape accountability. That couldn't be further from the truth. The kind of men that sit here at this table aren't the kind of people who allow for men to continue their behavior without like a severe punishment sometimes. And there's people out there who think that this is like some washing away or some sweeping under the rug. And I could assure you that like that's not what we're here to do. That's not what I agreed to do. Some people feel that that Oma hasn't been held accountable or is trying to escape it. And for those who may feel that way, what I say to you is you could have just asked. You could have asked the people who are close to him, who are interested in his development, who gave that palabra to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to take you on this journey. We expect accountability, and we expect a change in behavior. And you don't get that change in behavior until you can change the way somebody thinks. It changes the way they speak about the world, and that changes their behavior patterns. So that doesn't happen at a fire or at a circle. And to think that like we actually came to the circle saying that this wasn't going to get resolved in one circle. And we all agreed that like, hey, we're going to have to come back and this is going to be an ongoing thing, But for those who were wondering and asking, well, what has he done, and what has he done to try to be better? What has he done to rectify some of the behavior patterns? I could tell you that like I sit with this brother every week, several times a week, and I'm one of the people that he wronged. He's got to sit there and prove to me every week about his growth. And we go over the moral philosophy of the Huehuetlatoli and how our ancestors view the world and try to understand that as a guide to being better men. And we're going over the supreme wisdom teachings of Farad Muhammad to understand what was the catalyst that turned Malcolm from a pimp and a hustler and a player and a con man into the shining example that we all love him to be. What was it? There's lessons there to be learned. Let's learn these lessons, because in the learning of those lessons help shape us and reshape the men that we want to be, righteous men, right? For our community, so for our families. So if you were sitting there asking, well, what has he done? You know, he's done the hard work. He's done the hard work to have to answer to me. And those that know me know that, like, I don't give easy passes on shit. It was very difficult for me to even have that kind of conversation with him, given my role in all of this, you know. And those kind of conversations have helped me grow and challenge the things about me that need to be fucking changed. And having this kind of conversation on this kind of platform, you know what I mean, that allows everybody to see how we differ and how we hold each other accountable and what we expect from each other. You know, because I was saying this off air that, like, I don't yes man nobody. There ain't a single person that walks the face of this earth that I'm going to sit here and yes man. You know, I don't agree with you just because. I agree with you because I agree with you. And if I disagree with you, I'm going to tell you why I disagree with you. You know, but I'm going to hold my brothers accountable. I'm going to hold the people at this circle of men accountable. And you may not agree or you may not like that, you know, but we're the ones that do the work at the end of the day. We're the ones that our community will rely on to go and protect them and hold them accountable. We're the ones, the men that sit at this table have been intimately involved in checking other men like Pastel and a whole group of other men that we can name, you know, and to stand for our women and to protect our women and to stand outside their organizations and to protect those women and be willing to put our life on the line. Those are the men that sit at this table. That is the work that we've done to hold each other and other people accountable. So all of that shit that's going online that's like, oh, well, this is being utilized as a platform to escape accountability, man, that couldn't be further from the truth. And you're going to see. And I it's disappointing that, like my sisters didn't even give me the time to show you that. You know, had you just watched the episode, had you just gave us the ability to, like, show you what we were actually doing and what we're saying. Show me where I'm wrong. You know? Show me where I'm wrong. So I think that needs to be, like, dealt with, because that does lead into the conversation of warriorhood. What is warriorhood? You know? And that's one of the things. You know? That's one of the things warriorhood is being a better person, being a better man, being a better example, being the example that we didn't have, which is so hard to do. It's the hardest thing to do, is be something that you've never fucking seen. You know? So as you, Ome, have to navigate your life, you know, and I understand a lot of those things. You know, I understand your early development and not having a father there, and, you know, him doing a bunch of time in prison, and I understand that. I know what that does. You know, I know what that does. And I care enough about your development that I'm going to go through this with you. You know what I'm saying? And that's maybe more than what a whole lot of other people are willing to do. You know, but that's the standard that we're going to hold each other to. You know, and that's the standard my brothers hold me to. We were saying that last time. Like, Decolor has come and checked me. You know, Decolor has instituted things on me that stand to this day, because that was the right thing to do. And I had to submit to that. You know, I've checked Chewy right here. He's checked me. You think we just let shit slide with each other? That's not how we get down, you know. So hopefully through this conversation, you're going to see it. Hopefully through the next couple episodes, you're going to see, you know, the standard that we have and the things that we have to say. And hopefully the men in our community see the value in that, because that's who this is for. This is for you young men, you know, to see that we're not perfect. You know, there's a lot of things about myself and my experience as we go into this podcast that you're going to learn about me and mistakes that I've made and things that I did that were fucked up. Way more fucked up than what he's been accused of. You know what I'm saying? Is in my rap record. You know what I mean? You go check my file, you're going to see some fucked up things that I did. You know what I mean? We could talk about that. You know, so for those that care, you know, that care enough to, like, reach out and check us as men and to hold us accountable, you know, I value that. But if you love me enough to check me, then love me enough to stand up and defend me. You know what I'm saying? Love me enough to know that, like, hey, when somebody's doing me dirty, you know what I'm saying, that you would do for me what I would be willing to do for you. You know, because I've shown that shit. Anybody that knows me knows that I've shown that shit. I got a long record in this community of, like, holding that shit down for y'all. So if I'm not going to sit here and let somebody drag me through the mud, understand that that's why. You know what I mean? That's why I'm not just going to sit there and eat it. That's why I'm not going to allow nobody to call me something that I'm not. And if I'm guilty of something, then I'll admit to it. I'm man enough to admit to my shortcomings. You know what I'm saying? But if I'm not guilty of that shit, then don't paint me with that brush. I don't deserve that. You know? So I wish that, you know, some of my sisters held each other to the same standard that, you know, we hold each other to in our community as men with each other. You know, and that's part of our process, and that's part of our growth, and that may be a reflection of them, you know, like we are a reflection of one another, right? You know, in the supreme lessons, where you find no good men, you will find no good women, right? Like, that's what it says, because we're a reflection of each other. You know, the state of manhood is the same horrible state of womanhood. You're not in a moral and better situation. You don't have it. You know what I mean? You're not in a better place. You don't have it down more because you have a vagina. It's simply not true. You know what I'm saying? So this is an attempt for us to do something for us, to do something genuine, to have genuine conversations, to check each other, to have, like, a conversation about manhood and growth and our own personal experiences, you know, and to touch on subjects that, you know, our community is interested in, you know, and today we're going to talk about warriorhood. So before we go into it, I just wanted to make that statement. You know, I might have taken up a little bit too much time, but we're just going to go ahead and move forward.
All right. All right. Thank you, brother, for saying that. I really appreciate your words. Just throw that out there. Watch that. All right.
Only one who listens hears the cry of the wolf.
I'm not really gonna get into that because I think y'all put that beautifully. But going into that, you know, acknowledging Leonard Crowdog, and you know, he passed on yesterday, and there's so many like mixed, you know, emotions. Like, many people will say many bad things about him, but regardless of that, without his sacrifice and the work that he did, we probably wouldn't even be having, like, a men's circle. You know what I mean? The traditions that were able to come down through the people who sacrificed at Wounded Knee. Like, what's his name? Dickie Wilson.
Yep.
Was pushing really hard for natives to give up, like, an indigenous lifestyle. He was pushing really hard for natives to, like, basically accept the erasure and, like, move forward with, like, the American dream and to be something of themselves, right? And if the people who stood up at that time didn't stand up, who knows where we would be in terms of, like, indigenous identity and the ability to pray without physical harm from, like, the state. You know, without his sacrifice, regardless of what else he did in his life, you know, or the critiques people have about him, in my opinion, especially because a lot of the indigenous lineage I have, because the ceremonial lineage I have, a lot of it goes back to, like, Leonard Crowdog, and I'm gonna choose to honor him for the sacrifices that he did make and be grateful for what he did give us. And you know, without getting said.
So, yeah, just to add on to him, to what you just said, regarding Leonard Crowdog. It wasn't, you know, a lot of the few of the Chicanos from back in the 60s, 70s made the decision to join up with AIM, the American Indian movement back then, from being in a urban or campesino based activities. And so they were welcomed with open arms at Wounded Knee by AIM, and because of that, they were welcomed into. Obviously, those that don't know, Leonard Crow Dog is Lakota Sioux, and it was his welcoming with open arms into Lakota ceremonies, starting with the Sweat Lodge, the Nipi, and it was through him that many of our, older brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, Chicanas that started that process that many of us picked up on in the 90s. And so, just to acknowledge Crow Dog. Am I on?
Yeah, you're on.
Just to acknowledge Crow Dog. He was a spiritual guide for AIM, and he was Hyoka. And that's a whole other topic in itself, and what is these individuals that are born that way. But he opened up the Inipi, he opened up Hamblecha, he opened up Wiwanwashipi, Sundance to Chicanos and Chicanas to go in and start our reconnecting process as Native people, as original people to this land, and through that it gave us, and we acknowledged that we were people from the South, and so we started seeking that that path. And so some people found it going back to the Yaqui, some people going back to the Purepecha, some people going back into Nahua, other areas, Mayan, and so it was
Just more into it.
So it just just for those that don't know, it'd be good to go up on YouTube and Google and look up Leonard Crow Dog and just see the his life. He's a modern legend, if you want to say it like that. So I just want to again recognize him, and he's on his path to the spirit world, and he'll be watching over us from now on, and so with that I just want to Metakayasi.
Alrighty, sorry for the technical difficulties, y'all. We only got one mic because we're poor Indians. Yeah, just put that more in the middle for now.
We're not poor, we're just unorganized.
Well,
Tomato, potato.
buy that mic then.
Organize your way, ass.
Yeah.
Right, well,
Some mics.
Yeah, if we all do that, we'll have mics.
Hey, Victor.
Anybody else want to say anything else about him?
I just want to acknowledge Crow Dog. I never personally met him, but like Lucas said, he opened it up to Chicanos, and ceremony was like one of the first things that I saw that kind of helped me start to change my behaviors, and my persona. So I'm grateful that I found that, so thank you to him.
And I think everybody here sitting at this table has participated in some kind of ceremony, basically brought by him, and the people that are under him, the people who were the people who were his students. So yeah, definitely a kudos to that. And even though there's some questionable stuff that we all can nitpick on, but at the end of the day, when you're gone, it's just better to remember somebody by their positives, and ultimately Indian country's better with them. So kudos to that. All right, you hit the warrior topic. Does anybody have a definition of that, or at least their own version, what they think it is?
As I was taught, we were given the definition by Sage Ward that a warrior is a person who dedicates their life to the mastering or the perfection of war, is by definition a warrior. And that seems to be honestly like the best definition that I've ever probably heard, in regards to what is a warrior, what does that mean, and so those examples of warriorhood that I came across were from that particular cloth of men who followed that guideline in terms of what warriorhood meant. I could tell you that like the first, my first running into a warrior, this is kind of a trip if you think about it. I had done probably from 12 to 19. I did probably about like 5 years in and out of like the youth authority and different juvenile facilities, and I was really like a kid that was getting into a lot of bad shit. And I did a lot of time with people who were like murderers and people who wouldn't blink an eye to stab you and to do some really heinous things. But the first time I ever met an actual warrior was like long after I had left a facility. You know what I'm saying? The first actual warrior I had ever met was Lalo Angulo. Lalo was the first person that I ever met that was like exemplified, a living example of like, oh shit, that's what it looks like. You know what I mean? Like that's somebody who's walking that path. Because I had been around like gangsters, and I had been around people who were willing to kill, but nobody that was like a warrior. You know what I mean? That like lived that, breathed it, walked it, and he was the first. He was the first one that I had ever like seen and realized like, oh wow, okay, that's what it looks like. And I had a little bit of time being kind of close to his family to kind of pick his brain a little bit and to get a little bit of insight into like his life and some of the things that he would he participated in, and to get like a more modern example of like, what does this mean? You know what I mean? What does it mean to be a warrior? What are the responsibilities of somebody like that? Because I was already like a revolutionary. I was already like very revolutionary minded, but to hear that kind of insight and perspective of like a very deep and profound understanding of like what warriorhood meant. He was the first person I had ever met that was like that. And then following him, at least for me, in my own personal growth, is Brother Hawk. Hawk was the next person that was cut from that same kind of cloth of like following those particular guidelines in terms of warriorhood and trying to live their life by that, and I gained a lot from him, too, in terms of understanding these philosophies and learning the tricks of the trade, so to speak. And all of that came from Hawk. Like I learned way more from him than I ever did from learning from Lalo. But yeah, those were like my examples and my first interactions with it, and then through my relationships with them, met Sagage and was able to like develop other kind of relationships. Brother Lowe, who's out there, that I would say is cut from a very similar cloth like that, and these were the examples of warriors, and people who are actually trying to live that path, and it's much different from, I hear like that term being co-opted very easily, like, oh, we're spiritual warriors, and we're rainbow warriors, and we're this warrior, and we're that warrior. We're every kind of warrior, but like an actual one that like understands war. You know, so my definition of a warrior, you know, is definitely that. It's a person who spends their life trying to perfect the art of war. You know, it has to do, you know, like a lawyer is somebody who like studies law. A warrior studies war. You know, so it has to do very much with the profound understanding of that.
Are you a doctor?
Huh?
Are you a doctor?
No.
So I can't address you as a doctor because you're not a doctor.
Nice. We got people saying that. Oh,
Yeah, what?
we got somebody saying that they wanted to donate a mic. Hell yeah, we'll take it. Okay, sorry. Go.
So I think one of the things that I did want to recognize from both of those two brothers is their connection to the Native Youth Movement and how they, through some of their publications, were instrumental in promoting the warrior virtues. That it's, you know, because
Quick. How long? When did you meet Lalo?
I met Lalo back in 95, 96.
Was he already like that?
No, he.
So you seen his transformation? Like you knew him?
I didn't know him like intimately. I met him, but it wasn't like he was already involved at that point with the group that was called Sons of Anáhuac at that time. But he was part of this other little like community youngsters that were, you know, just riding their bikes around the hood, and you know they were called the pros. So they were connected with you know, through family and through neighborhood or neighbors, through to the Quinto Sol, the band, and so they came together with this other individual, and he had Sons of Anáhuac. So through that, they got exposed to Sweat Lodge again, Sweat Lodge and Lakota teachings up at Red Winds with our uncle Ernie Longwalker, Ernie Peters Longwalker, and so he brought them into the lodge and started that introduction into Native warriorhood, I guess you could say, Native warriorhood. So that exposure led him to a path where years later he joined up with the Peace and Dignity Journey, starting in Alaska, and another group starting in Patagonia, South America, and you know they're running every day through different Native communities, through cities, through the, you know, just out there and through the, you know, just the land. And he did that twice, and they would end up in somewhere in Mexico, or I don't know if he ended up in Panama. But I think it was that exposure to all these different communities and the need and the devastation that colonization has done, and how the people will welcome them and join up with that prayer and that intention, and it just started shaping his outlook, you know, his exposure out there through Canada. He was exposed to the Native Youth Movement, which is kind of like a branch of American Indian movement, but by Native youth in the late 90s and into the 2000s. And I think it was that, you know, that exposure to those warrior virtues, because of certain actions that had already been taking place up there during the 90s that you know, pushed him to this path, you know, and so that's what he would bring to East LA when he would come home. And we would be talking to him, you know, whenever we can, and showing us this and teaching us that. And
because I credit him with bringing the warrior flag to East LA. You know, when I tell in the Warriors program, when I tell about you know, about the flag and how we got it, you know, I credit Lalo to, as the one who brought it to us. I don't know of anybody else who had brought that prior to that.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I want to say that that's true, and again, I also want to like reiterate that it's he through that peace and dignity journey, he made relations. That's better said.
Oh.
He made relations with people out there in on one of the reservations that was having Sundance, and he became a Sundancer. And I think it's that, you know, Sundance is like its own topic, but it's a really, really intense experience where, you know, you're putting yourself at the mercy of the elements, and you know, and so I think it was those experiences of the peace and dignity journey, Sundance, and the exposure with this circle of people, that the natives that were putting all that together, that he was able to just, they welcomed him into that circle. So when you come back to East LA, he would bring all that, and we're just like sponges and just gravitating, because you know, all we knew was out here. We're like, whatever we can, you know, get in you know, in some of the ceremonies out here, and some books that we're reading, and there was no YouTube, there was no cell phones at that time. Cell phones were like this big, so you know,
they didn't do what they do today.
Yeah, we didn't have that access, you know. So yeah, he brought the warrior flag to East LA, and but he would take off, you know, because that was his calling, was out there on the land, and you know, he would go out to, you know, to Canada, and just you know, just learn, you know. And Songage was out there already, and you know, he was showing them you know, how to live off the land, you know. And I think that's like one of the things about warriorhood is it's you know, it has a lot of different pieces to it, and it's not just one thing, you know. And that's why I think it becomes very convoluted with other things, because there are many battles that we have to fight in this, you know, in this place right now. Colonization takes many different avenues, and so some, you know, I think some folks just gravitate towards one or the other, and you know, but at the end of the day, it really has to do with doing battle to decolonize. You know, I think that's like how I've approached it is, it's decolonization is the goal, you know. And decolonization to what end? It's for our self-determination, you know, to control our own destiny. You know, so
when you say decolonize, when you say decolonize, are you talking about living the way our ancestors lived, or removing the colony from our current state?
A little bit of both, but obviously we gotta take, you know, we gotta do what's in our control, in our power to do. So that's to, you know, do away with some of these ideas that have been infected us. I want to say with European ideas of manhood. You know, what you know. So you know, there was that's the conflict, I think, you know, where we're trying to figure out as brown native men, how do we become, you know, something that, like you said, we haven't seen in a long time. And so I think these brothers have been able to exemplify, you know, the very teachings, you know, put them into practice. And you know, again, there's no such thing as perfection. I think that's actually a European idea. You know, when people, well, nobody's perfect. Well, you know, that's, you know, because it goes to that there's only been in history just one perfect individual.
Our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
So I got a question. What was your Red Hawk? What's your, you know, experience with warriorhood? Like, where did you first come across that concept and like, what does that mean to you?
All right. Yeah, let's hear it. I'm pretty loud though, naturally. All right. Real quick. Oh, hold on. Before let me hit that. I did ask our audience what they thought a warrior was. So let's try not to ridicule our fans if you don't agree with their answer. But I do want to read what people's opinion is, and then I'll talk about basically how I experience it. So let's see. One person put a selfless individual who's willing to risk and sacrifice their own for the betterment of his or her people. This person put, there's a lot to do. There's a lot to it, but a thinker, a prayer, humble, love for the people, a leader, and an action taker. Okay, someone who partakes in the struggle or conflict or other versions, experienced soldiers or fighters. Protectors and providers. Someone who's brave, protects the weak, defends freedom, peace, lives with honor, sacrifices a lot.
Crown dancer.
Someone who can't live without something to challenge. All right. No shots fired. Okay, so yeah. So I grew up in a military-esque family.
Okay.
I actually have a great grandfather who's like a general in the Mexican army. He even had like the Captain Crunch.
Damn.
The Captain Crunch thing.
The only berries that crunch.
Yeah, the shoulder tassels. Like there's a picture of him in my great uncle's house. And
Was he at the Alamo?
He might have been.
Oh, that would be dope to find out your grandpa was at the Alamo giving it to these motherfuckers.
Yeah.
My grandpa killed Davy Crockett.
That'd be kind of. Unfortunately, he might have also been hunting Zapata and shit like that.
Okay.
So
what a piece of shit he was.
But not confirmed, right? My dad has a saying. He says, "Oh, you had family on both sides." So I'm like, "Oh fuck, all right."
Well, fuck the family on the other side.
So
That's what they say.
that's the first thing. My dad, I think it like skipped a generation, but my dad. Well, actually, no. Let me take that back. My grandfather was a maniac. I mean, yeah. I'll tell a story about it real quick. My dad was being chased by somebody, and he called his dad saying they're chasing me. And he got down the street that we're on while my gramps was holding a revolver, a big ass hand cannon, and was standing in the middle of the street with like the fucking square stance.
Damn. Shit is real when you're square standing.
The fucking square stance. And he's just going bam, bam, shooting at the people that my dad are being chased by. He's dead now, so statute of limitations. But so that's the kind of people, hearing those kind of stories is like my first.
I get
kinda,
that though. As a father, I understand that.
Yeah, you do some shit for your
my
kid.
son, if my son was running down the street talking about they're chasing me,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're gonna get it. You're gonna get it.
Then I got like uncles, who, they live the gang lifestyle, and obviously, well, not obviously, we should probably maybe dive into the connection between warriorhood and warrior circles and gang affiliation, gang banging, because there's a lot of connection there. I'm not an expert in that, so I don't want to talk about that. I've heard y'all say some good stuff about it. That I'm like, all right. And then, like I said, trickle down to my pops. He joined the Marines like right before I was born. He didn't get to go to Desert Storm. He felt that he needed to, but he didn't. Yeah.
What a shame.
Yeah, but he ended up re-enlisting to go to the Iraq War. So,
veteran.
So that. So that was my own kind of form of, originally what I thought a warrior. I mean, it is war, you know.
Yo, yeah.
But
there are warriors in the military.
Right,
though.
right.
Don't get it twisted.
Yeah.
Yeah, but not everybody in the military is a warrior.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, you know, my pops, he definitely gave me actually, even though, you know, military aside, he's given me plenty of experiences. I should say, real experiences to make up for that.
Okay. All right, right.
And definitely, one of the things that I love about him is that he's always fought for what he felt was right, and he has defended countless people that he didn't know. And I'm talking like random people on the streets, you know, like a Mexican dude, little paisita guy, you know, 5 foot nothing, and as a big giant dude trying to knock him out, and my dad just swoops in and you know, defends his dude just because of the size, you know.
Big giant dude, huh?
Yeah.
Got some on your own.
Yeah. So, you know, stuff like that is pretty much my examples. And then obviously, you know, the stuff that we talk about, the stuff that, you know, we kind of dabble in, you know, as far as like training, you know, mixed martial arts, or training, you know, maybe with some type of weapon of some sort. And yeah, that's ultimately my experience with that kind of stuff. And also just for some reason as to why I do have a family, and I think it's very important as a man to be able to defend your family, and not just yourself, and not only your family but even others if you can. And I have found myself several times, you know, even with y'all, defending people outside of my family, but more in the community, or sticking up for you know, women or things like that. So kind of, you know, those teachings, that stuff I saw my dad doing, you know, I definitely take pride in also replicating those kind of behaviors. And I think it's important that at least, maybe not becoming necessarily a warrior, but as a man, at least to know how to defend oneself, one's family, and one's community. So,
What about you, Chuy? What's your experience with warriorhood, or what's your?
I could vaguely remember the moment, but like I remember there was a big my family, my grandma from my dad's side had 8 kids. My grandma from my mom's side had 16 kids. So we were having a family party, and you know, my parents invited both sides, so like we were like up to the sidewalk on that day, you know. And so like I remember that like some shit was going on outside, you know, because like we heard some gunshots and whatnot, and some guy that my uncle knew like was talking to him really quick, and my uncle just points to the side, and that fool runs through the side, right? And like a couple of seconds later, this car rolls up, and like my uncle's in the gate, and they pull up and they ask him like, "Hey, have you seen this fool?" Like da da da. And my tío just didn't answer, and then they're like Maravilla gang, you know, and they pull out a strap, and my uncle goes, "Yo también tengo la mía," you know. And then they're like, "Oh shit," you know, like, and my uncle back in the days was like super paisa, you know, like the golden buck belt, you know, the golden chain with the sombrero, you know, like, so like they're like, "Oh fuck," you know, like
He might be a somebody.
yeah, you know. So they just fucking they took off, you know. And like that's crazy because like a lot of people know my uncle, you know, like the local gangsters wouldn't fuck with us because they'd be like, I would just be like, "Oh, El Charro's mi tío," you know, and they'd be like, "Oh, okay, you know, like they wouldn't tag in our house, like nothing. They tag everything else, like the light pole, the little fucking thing, you know, like, but they wouldn't tag our house. And so like that was like the first time I seen anything like that, you know. But like yeah, you know, another thing is like growing up, you know, like in a neighborhood, gang infested neighborhood, is that, you know, you eventually come into contact with it, you know, and you know, something drew me towards that, you know. Like you said, it was like kind of misconstrued warriorhood, you know, like you are kind of like brainwashed, you know. But then one thing that pulled me out is when I started learning about the actual warriorhood that you were talking about, you know. And that came through Lucas, you know. He was the first one to kind of like open my mind to that. Like I said earlier, you know, like I you know, started doing La Cota ceremony, and then over there you learn about the other battle, you know, the battle within yourself, you know, that we always have, you know. And then leaning into that and learning about the Huehuetlatoli and the Cantares Mexicanos and all this other stuff, Like they tell a child when he's born that he has come to a world, or she, the whatever child, the child when they're born, that they have come to a world of suffering and pain, where you will go hunger, fatigue, like coldness, heat, all these things, that make life hard for you, but they give us gifts that will make our life happy.
Laughter.
Yeah, and so like, if it's a man, they give him the spear and then the shield, and they give him a thing to the thing they used to plant. The women, they give them the xiquihuite, the metate, the molcajete. Like the herbs, the foods. Like that's their gift. The sewing. Like masters of their craft. Like, and like going more into depth of it, like the warfare aspect of it, of how it was an honor for you to give your life, to defend your people, or for the cause that you were required of, and like the you were pretty much dying in un campo de flores, like a battlefield of flowers, and how it was tied to like the poeticness behind warfare, so like it's not like the savagery that everybody just thinks about, like, oh, it's just testosterone, like yeah, like we're men and that's who we are, and there's honor in that, but like the there's the other kind of way too, where you're being like warfare and you're all sneaky, like using fucking quilts and shit to spread disease, rather than being head up fight, and that's where we're at today's world, like people are shooting, they're scared to get down, so.
Yeah. So, what about you, Mr.
Mr. Dose.
Mr. Tutu? Mr. 22 Ravens? What was your
So I will say that
introduction of warriorhood?
in thinking about this, I thought about something I hadn't thought about a long time ago. I haven't thought about it in a long time. It's not something I thought about as like my introduction to a warrior, but I can remember my first encounter with whom I would deem had warrior qualities, and it's somebody I met once and never met again, didn't know ever, just a chance encounter. And honestly, I was in the 6th grade. I was on the dash going from Sereno Middle School to my house, and I had to pick up my little brothers every day from the babysitter house. So like I couldn't really stick around and do like after school activities, and I had a girlfriend at the time. I couldn't stay with her for very long, and I'm in the 6th grade or 7th grade maybe, and so I got to go pick up my little brothers from the babysitter and then get them on the bus, take them home, and then like get them fed and have them do their homework, and then like complete my chores and all these things. So I'm like stressed about all the things I got to do when I get home, because I know the house is a mess. And I had a bad day for whatever reason. I don't know what was going on in my life, but I had a bad day, and I was able to get a bag of Cheetos, and which wasn't common for me. I don't always have money to get like Cheetos, and for whatever reason I got these Cheetos, and I was hungry and I was eating them. I picked my little brothers up, and we're in the dash, and they're kind of like picking from my Cheetos bag, and I'm getting from it. And then before I know it, I realized that there's no more Cheetos left in the bag, and I only got a couple, and the twins had like munched them all. And the last one,
Dirty poja.
I don't know if it was poja or
Caralho.
I don't know which one it was, but they had like,
that's my number one guy.
they had like got the last Cheetos, and I remember it like triggered me so crazy, and I kind of like roughhoused him a little bit. Like
Who?
I don't remember one of the twins, and I was just like subconsciously just kind of being like mean. I was being mean to him. I was bullying him, and like I don't know if I was like smashing the wrapper in him or whatever. I was
do that though, man.
I was like, but it was too much. You know what I mean? Like it was too much because the dude sitting next to me, who wasn't very much older than me and was significantly smaller than me, but like had like a build to him or whatever. He looked at me and goes, "Hey dog, like what are you doing? Like stop. You're hurting him." And I looked over and I was like, "Oh shit, you're right." You know what I mean? Like
He checked you.
he checked me. You know what I mean? And I felt immediately bad. I feel bad right now thinking about it. You know what I mean?
You're a real
Like,
piece of shit, you know?
yeah. You know, and that's what I see. You know what I mean? Like I remember that moment, and I remember that like fuck, like I got to do better because I was in the wrong. You know what I mean? Like they were hungry. You know what I mean? I wasn't taking into account their experience for the day or anything like that. You know, I'm a kid and I got all these
They
other
like
things.
Cheetos too.
You know what I mean? Yeah, they like Cheetos too, and like I'm not worried about them. I'm worried about my girlfriend and like all this other shit I got going on in my life, and then I got to go home and do the chores and then have them do all the things. You know what I mean? And like my mom's gonna trip if she comes home and
I will beat
this or that
your
or
ass.
something is out of place. You know what I mean? Like I'm just like worried about all these things. You know, and I'm taking it out on my little brother, and this random person whom I've never seen again. You know, like never in my life, like had the gumption to tell a stranger, like, "Hey, you're tripping, chill." You know. I ended up going to boot camp as a kid, and that at the time was framing like what would be a warrior. You know, like in boot camp they don't use the word warrior very often. They use like soldier and stuff like that, and like the songs are addressing like soldierhood and being a good soldier and practicing soldierhood, you know. And then every now and then though they would use the term warrior to commend a specific person maybe who had done a thing. So at a really young age, and probably the same year that I got checked, I had went to boot camp, and now I got indoctrinated with this like military soldier version of what the United States would probably consider warriorhood. And so I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna join the Marines, and I didn't really like solidify that idea until my best friend a few years later, he was gonna join the Marines, and my perspective was like, well, you're not gonna go without me. You know what I mean? Like if you're gonna be a sniper, I'm gonna be your spotter. Like I'm not gonna let you go and run and join the military without me. You know, like that was my mindset at the time. I remember him verbalizing that and saying it about me, and I was like, all right, well, cool, then we're in it together. He ended up having a kid and not joining the military, so I didn't join the military because I had got around the time that like he was pulling away from that because his wife got pregnant. I was getting introduced to a new version of warriorhood. I had met Lalo around that time through a group that I won't name, the Red and Blacks. And I had met Lalo around the time, and I didn't really interact with him too much, but I knew who he was, and I saw the way other people reacted to his presence, and it was unlike anyone else in the room. Mm-hmm. He was a special guy, you know, and I remember seeing that, and I still didn't really know what was up with warriorhood because he had passed on shortly after, like my second encounter with him. And he wasn't around very often, so it wasn't like there was time, you know. Then I had another like indoctrination of what the ideas of warriorhood would be by this group, only to like repeat the teachings that I learned there and feel foolish after the fact and kind of seeing like what was really going on here with this group, you know, and then kind of like, or not kind of like getting heartbroken and discerned and like not really knowing like what's going on here, not seeing like the duality of the situation, like, and then feeling, you know, all kinds of different ways about it, you know, like really let down in a lot of different ways, especially because that group was a big part of my introduction into like what would be my frame of mind and my identity and all the things, you know. And like if it wasn't for that group and, you know, through Red Hawk and like being introduced to it like through him, you know, I'd be hella like calling myself a Latino or some shit, you know, like or a Hispanic. So I get discerned with that, and I kind of step away from what that would be for a long time, until I met a brother who we talked a lot about my philosophies and things, and he vibed with me, and he introduced me to like Steve Coakley, and he started talking Escarcega.
Oh, David. David. Okay.
And he introduces me to Steve Coakley and these teachings and even like the nation and Khalid Muhammad. He's telling me about this and that, and he goes, dog, like in the time that I had like stepped away from like being with that group or going down indigenous roads, I had supplemented that time through a traumatic experience I had back then with my best friend passing away, getting murdered. I kind of like left all this like in the dirt shortly after my best friend had got murdered. The whole thing with Pastel and this group came up, and I was just like,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I went and studied Muay Thai. I tried to go to school, and I went instead. I studied Muay Thai every single day. I think there was a time where me and Red Hawk were talking to each other for a minute, and then I just like fell off the face of the earth after these traumas. And then I went to a pancake breakfast. Mind you, the last time we had seen each other, I was probably like 285 pounds, 290 pounds. And then I left this traumatic situation and went and like hit Muay Thai 7 days a week, 6 hours a day. Like I was on scholarship, so I had to clean, and he seen me at this pancake breakfast, like 60 pounds light, like twig. He was like, what the fuck happened to you? Yeah, do you have cancer? You know, like, so you know, I studied Muay Thai. I dedicated all my time to Muay Thai and boxing and a little bit of not very much grappling, like real grappling, just like this MMA version of it, and studying these arts just relentlessly. Mm-hmm. And then through, I don't know, the cosmos, I had to get a job, and I had to stop studying Muay Thai, and I had to like start supplying for my house, having to go out to work way far. I don't have a car, I don't have support, monetary support, so it faded away. And through David, it faded away. Long story short, I went on this whole other different path with my life. And then David ends up linking through Facebook or something like that, and he's like, "Yo, you gotta come meet this cat, Sagi Agent. Like, they do jujitsu at this spot. I know you're into it. Like, you know, we talked about it because I tattooed him, you know." And he's like, "Oh, you're into it, and you gotta come check this shit out, dog." And he was like really pushing me hard to go to Corazon, the CDP, and like try out this jujitsu class, and like, dog, it's for the people, and like he's really hyping it up and juicing it up. And so I went to like one jujitsu class, and then from there, I got invited to go to that sit down and meet and greet with him, and then from there, like, started
with Sagage?
Yeah, okay. Frequenting the warrior program, and then
that
like
big circle one.
Yeah. You know which one I was talking. And so through there, like from him, like really bringing me in hard, like I start spending more time there, and then I saw that, and I got introduced to like a whole different realm of warriorhood. Like prior to that, the definition of warriorhood that I had subscribed to, which was like this generic native version, was like, you can think about war after the fact. A warrior is a provider for his family, right? In the current day and time, a warrior is somebody who's gonna go and like go to work and come home and put the food on the table, and like that's a warrior. If you're not doing that, you're not a warrior. And I'm not saying that's not true. Mm-hmm. But that was what I was subscribing to. I had never really thought about warfare and engaging an enemy in combat that is equal, if not way more powerful than you are, and studying what it takes to be able to get in and out of one of those situations alive, or to even like have the will to engage something like warriorhood in the aspect of direct combat, direct action, not literally that. You know, and I was just like, whoa. And then, you know, prior to that, you think about like what that would look like, and going up in the sea, you think, oh, that's impossible. It's impossible. You can't engage the United States in combat, or engage an empire in combat and survive and come out alive or win. You can't do those things. Like, they have helicopters and tanks and satellites, and they have all the things. You can't. Not one of us can do that. That's ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like,
until you meet
somebody who has. You know what I mean? And then you meet another person who has, and you realize that there's a whole society of this that has a lineage that date back to the time of first contact with the invaders. You know, and it's like, oh shit, like this shit never ended. It's still around, and those who tell you it's not possible are tripping, because they haven't done the computation. So how can they be so profound in their conclusion, to quote Steve Coakley? You know, and it's like, oh shit, it is possible. People are doing it. It's a real thing. And then it's like, you got to change your definition. You got to see that what you thought. For me personally, it was like, you know, I saw that what I thought was just not what it was, and I had to change my perspective and reevaluate everything, and then figure out, okay, what are the steps? What do I got to do? And to be honest, like those steps honestly weren't very clear to me. You know, I just kind of kept going to the Warriors program and was really invited back. Like, hey, keep coming. You know, what you got, we don't have, and we'll do it. And I was happy to oblige. But like the actual like structure of like, hey, if you want to do some of these things, this is what it is. And I just kind of like, well, I'm just gonna go through it, and whatever happens, happens. And if something arises where I'm gonna get down, I'm gonna go get down. You know, I had experience with activism with that other group, so I did have like a concept of like, okay, there are front lines, there are actions, there are things that can be taken, and if I'm able to go and do it, I'm gonna do it. You know what I mean? Like, because that's at least what I see. You know, when it comes to warriorhood, like when it comes to people like Lalo and the other folks who came before him, it's like, okay, and these examples that I've been getting, it's like, all right, so yeah, it can be done, and if not me, then who? So
Now when?
wanted to bring up something that you kind of touched on, and that was the I don't want to say the confusion, but the conflagration,
conflict.
the how they mixed warrior and soldier. You know, that it's the same thing. And from what I came to learn is that soldiers.
We're in the hood.
Get down.
Yeah. Soldier.
And soldiers are there's a hierarchy to both, right? To a warrior society and to an army, but in soldiers in an army, it's they engage in activities, and the soldiers taking orders from the top, and so if they don't, there's consequences. There's a military tribunal or some kind of charges. There's dishonorable discharge. There's stuff from being incarcerated to just letting you go, but you can't really do much in society in some respects. You can't get like government help and stuff like that, right? Whatever. And soldiers in this country, right? But you're basically taking orders. And when it comes to warriorhood, you're taking orders in soldierhood from others. In warriorhood, you're taking orders from yourself. You're taking is what you consider correct, what you consider right. What you consider is what needs to be done, without having to wait for someone to tell you, without having to take an order from somebody else. There are, when you're in situations of a battle, where actions are being taken, yes, you take it from those that have the most experience, obviously, but for the most part,
Off the battlefield.
yeah, you're
We're in the hood.
Yep.
City Indians.
Right. So just that's one of the differences that I think it translates out into the street, right? That sometimes we're engaging in certain activities that harms the community. It harms even it harms your neighborhood sometimes, because there's gonna be some retaliation. There's gonna sometimes or you're engaging in some kind of like action that is it might take innocent, as they say, and it's like I don't give a fuck, right? I don't give a fuck is that attitude, whereas with warriorhood is like I do give a fuck.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah.
With warriorhood is like I do care. I do care what happens to me. I do care what happens to my community. I do care what happens. That I want to see the future of our people move forward in time to be successful, to be free, or to be more freer. So that the future generations can take on what we built and even take it further.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I wanted to kind of like mention about the difference between a soldier and a warrior. Like you said, it was there are warriors in the army, in the Marines, in the Navy, or what, you know. So, but you know, so like they'll tell you, you know, sometimes they come back from such traumatized experiences that it's hard for them to even tell you, or they can't tell you, because then by they telling you, then, you know, they're exposing themselves to you know, what is it, crimes against humanity, or some kind of like shit that they did that they were told to do, and you know, they're you know, they're out there in somebody else's land.
You mean guarding poppy fields?
Yeah, guarding poppy fields.
So,
and stuff,
you know, I want to touch on that point that you kind of make about about like we do give a fuck, you know, the fact that like what we do is out of like the profound love for our people and our community, and that's really what drives us, right? That's the driving force between getting us to get off the fucking couch and go do something about our circumstances. You know, it's that profound feeling of love for our people, for our community, that like I gotta do something about this. And you know, and my experiences of dealing with warriors, you know, that was always, you know, that's what always separated them from the rest of the pack. Is like their willingness to go do the things that we were never willing to do, you know, prior to like seeing that as an example, you know, having being able to sit and listen to like Sagage's war stories and you know, and the things that like you know Hawk and Lalo and that crew of NYMers went and did, you know, and the things you know, when you hear about these magnificent stories of battlefield feats by Wolverine, and you know what I mean, like you can't help but be inspired and realize that like man, you can go and make a difference, and you can make things happen. You know, there's plenty of examples, you know, from like the Mohawk Warrior Society and their struggle, and if you know, if anybody out there wants to have a nice little laugh, go look at Good Old Boys Mohawk Warrior Society. Go ahead and type that shit in Google, and it's a nice little video of
It's a fun trip.
yeah, of what happens when law enforcement tries to drive through the Mohawk reservation, and they get ran the fuck out of the res by the Mohawk Warrior Society. Like, you know, these are real examples of what warriorhood is. You know, it's doing the hard work. You know, it's doing the things that put us in extreme danger sometimes. It's doing the work that nobody wants to do sometimes. You know, it's dedication and living up to your integrity. You know, when you set out with a goal, like let's say like the Warriors program, you know, like our goal was to spearhead jiu-jitsu into our community, and we were going to be relentless about it until like we achieve our goal, you know, and we kind of did that. We were able to, you know, there's jiu-jitsu gyms in the Brown community now, where before us there wasn't any, you know, and that took 10 years, 3 times a week of our coaches dedicating that time and getting in there and providing that to our community that didn't have it,
unpaid,
you know, and that's what that like time, like sacrifice, you know, one of our warrior virtues is self-sacrifice, right? We lean as warriors on this concept of self-sacrifice as opposed to self-preservation, where everybody else in the community gets the right to run away and save themselves. It is our obligation to step forward and have to sacrifice ourselves, you know. And in my experience, you know, like even at you know, not too long ago, you know, we're at a community event, little rough housing happens, a gun gets pulled out. You know what I'm saying? Everybody has the right to hit the corner, to go duck, to go hide. You know what I'm saying? But those of us who stand by this and will stand by our community didn't do that. You know what I'm saying? We had to face the guns. You know, and that's what warriorhood is sometimes. It's putting yourself in a position to have to live up to the things that we say we do. Integrity leans on the concept of another warrior virtue. What I think is what I say is what I do. That's our definition of integrity. It's consistency between thoughts, words, and deeds. I'm gonna think something and I'm gonna say it, so I gotta go and do it. And if I think, I love my community and I say it, I love my community, I'll defend you, then I gotta go, when the time comes, go and defend my community, go defend the members of my community. So my interaction, my living up to these things are based upon the standards of those around me who I could model myself after. You know what I mean? People like Sagage, people like Lalo, people like Hawk, that really showed me that, like, this is the path. You know what I mean? And if you're gonna walk this path, then you better be prepared to sacrifice. And this is a long road, And those guys too, like they're not perfect. You know what I'm saying? They had their faults, but they taught us a lot, and they did a lot for me, And I couldn't sit here and tell my story and talk about warriorhood, and my interaction with it and interpretation of it without mentioning those people. They're very fundamental to my growth and my understanding of it, and that's the cloth, that's the lineage that I come from, is from very much from that perspective.
All right. Should we jump in the other topic now before?
Well, anybody? Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, go for it.
I just also want to acknowledge Lalo. I never met him either, but like you talked about how like people would revolve around him, right, when he was around. In 2012, there was a Peace and Dignity journey that Lucas invited me to participate in, and it was my first time, going to something like that. And I remember we met up in the East LA Civic Center, and before the run started, they laid out this like quilts, and they had a bunch of staffs, right? And they're like, oh yeah, the runners that are gonna go from, that are gonna go like pretty much from up north down south, like they're the ones that have to carry the staff because they're gonna be with it the most, right? So there was this guy, and he goes and like he just sees me, and he's like looking at me, and I was looking at the staff. I didn't know at the time, but it was like a water staff. It had like a blue snake on it, kind of. And I was just looking at it, and this guy grabs it and he picks it up and he walks away, and I was like, yeah, cool, nothing else, it's nothing, right? And then later on, like when we were about to start the running, he goes, hey, do you mind holding this? And then he like does this, and then he goes to do something else, right? And I was like, oh, okay, so I guess I'm gonna run with it, And I think the first stop was like at the cemetery, right? We went to the Oddfellows Cemetery in Whittier where Lalo's buried, and I remember everybody like gathered around his grave, and like the way people talked about him and the stuff that he did and everything was like oh shit, like that,
real.
Yeah, because like even though he's gone, like these people are like remembering him, And I was all like, damn, that tripped me out that time. And like I remember like I ended up running with the staff the whole way, like, and I felt like there was a point where they're like, oh, you could get on the car if you want, like, so to make the process faster. And I felt like weak sauce. I was like, nah, I'm gonna run, like they gave me the staff, I'm gonna run with it, and like a part of it was because of like hearing how he would like run from like Alaska down to like what was it, Panama, where they went down to, like Central America. Like, dude, like I thought I was a runner like that motherfucker, like so. That's one thing that I want to kind of add to that. In another sense, like not to promote war, but to promote self-defense, because we're torn people of warfare. Like the Europeans came and they got the elders, they got the children, and they would like have to make the men surrender, and like they demasculated like man, they like a lot of shit, because those are the frontline people that are gonna stand up to defend the people. They were the ones that like kind of wiped out. Yeah. So then where does that leave the children? Like no figures. The revolution, same thing. It was the men fighting. And shout out to the women. There's women warriors out there too. Toipurina, the Tongva Nation right here in Los Angeles. Like acknowledging her, giving thanks to her also, you know. But like, you know, like we're torn from warfare, you know, from the revolution to the Alamo to the Pueblo revolt to you know, gang violence, you know, like where they lock up all the men, you know, where does that leave the children, you know, like there's no male like role models, you know, like they just want to get rid of us, and you know, like you know, because the warriors are the front line, you know, like those are the ones that are gonna like defend when it comes down to it, you know. So
like the cholos are the like those who would become cholos would be our warriors potentially, you know, like had we been living like with our culture still intact. Like these are most likely the people who would be the warriors for the community, you know. But because of the circumstances in the state we're in, like that getting jumped in and getting locked up, like that became the coming of age ceremony, right? Which is one of the topics.
Good segue.
You know,
that's what I was trying to
Yeah.
you know, we gotta jump on is that like that became the coming of age. And like for me, I got disciplined by going to a boot camp in San Luis Obispo called Angel Gate Academy, you know, and versus like youth authority or wherever else people like or youth get sent to be indoctrinated, you know. And so, you know, many people grow up getting disciplined by the state, and that becomes their coming of age ceremony. That becomes their rite to passage into manhood, and then the people who are showing them the ropes, like they don't even know the ropes, you know, like these people are gonna have to figure their life out, most of them at 50 years old, you know what I mean? Like my pops got out of prison, spent all of his 20s and 30s and most of his 40s locked up. You know, he's got to figure his life out now as a 50-year-old man. You know, he's got to figure out square one at 50 years old. You know, that's crazy. That's
nuts.
You know what I mean? And like, so these people who would be our warriors, had they gone through maybe a traditional rite, you know, coming of age, rite of passage ceremony, that if our culture was still intact, you know, what would that look like? You know, would we be in a better place? You know what I mean? Because it's not like the warriors of the old and before times. You know, they weren't going to war with the Europeans prior to the invasion, right? But we still had warriors. You know, so
going to war with each other.
You know, so like, what does that look like for us in modern times? You know, if we had the same rites of passage, are we still going to war with each other? Do we identify a common enemy? You know, is that something that was taking place back then, or does the philosophy of warfare completely different? You know what I mean, compared to what was back then to what is now, or is that question even relevant?
Yeah,
for that, I can, as you're saying that, I'm remembering this this quote, you know, and they're like, you know, it's Hollywood movies and stuff, but it's the one Geronimo, and towards the end, he meets his nephew, and his nephew's like, I wish I would have been back then fighting with you guys, fighting for well, you know, it's like, it's easier to die in the land that you know than to live in one that makes no sense, you know, which is, he's telling them, but the Apache must live on. And I think what you're getting at is like, it's today's war it's become amplified and internalized, you know, where back then they had their rites of passage, ceremonies, these processes that young boys went through to become and be recognized as men and also as warriors, because it involved learning how to use weapons, but at the same time, you know, depending on, you know, if you're nomadic nations or you were sedentary nations, you know, they all had a process to learn that trade, right? Hunting,
feeding the people,
right? And so, you know, but in today's, you know, and it becomes even more technologically advanced, is, you know, we're fighting just to regain control of ourselves, you know, to regain that humanness, you know, that the society through its empire and capitalism and it's just all about dehumanizing the human being in order to, you know, to just more profit. And in that process, you know, they're imposing and injecting us and infecting us with so many different ideologies and I, you know, points of views and lifestyles that aren't our own. And so we're just trying to, you know, we're trying to just gather what was, you know, in the Huehuetlatoli and these ceremonies, you know, Wiwanwashipi and Hamblecha and some of these other ways, you know, what they were living through back then, capture that and trying to see how we can, you know, live by that in this society.
So I got a question. Are there some examples of some of those early coming of age ceremonies that survived colonialism? You know, do we have those intact? Are they still being practiced?
As far as my nation goes, not that I know of, but I do know, or I think I know, that there are many nations that do still have those ceremonies.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are some of them?
Like
if we were to just kind of just off the top of our head.
So I heard a story of someone's son. He had his coming of age ceremony, and he had to basically go and survive in the wilderness alone for 7 days. So like,
Jesus!
You're gonna go out here on your land, like you go out here on your land. You know, he's been his whole life learning, preparing for it. For, you know, his father like living the traditional way inside the you know, the pit house, and then his boy's gotta go live for 7 days alone in the wilderness. And he goes and he does it, and he comes back, and the person who's telling me the story says, well, he asked him, you know, how was it? How'd you do? And he goes, I was bored.
Okay, yeah, I can see that, especially for like, I'd rather just be home playing video games. Yeah.
No, but he went through it.
Yeah, but he
did. He was bored.
He
was so proficient at it.
Yes,
that he was bored.
That he was bored.
I've been doing this,
you know, and completely ungrateful for the experience.
Yeah, if you're out there listening, you know what I mean. You got some big shoes to fill on that one.
You know,
he didn't appreciate it.
It seemed a bit ungrateful for the experience because he's not recognizing what it took to get him there. I think.
Yeah.
And maybe that should be part of the ceremony. Is like, look, like this is what it culminated. You were so well prepared that you were bored. Like that's an accomplishment. I don't think it was. I don't think he.
What a
saw
proud
it.
father that must have been. Huh?
Yeah. You know, but his son was like, I was bored. You know, and just like walking through the forest, like, fucking stupid. Cut skin this shit. You know what I mean? Like,
stupid deer.
Be better, deer.
Yeah, you know, and it's like how envious I was. You know what I mean? Like straight, damn, like that could have been me in another lifetime. You know what I mean? But like my circumstances are so much different. You know?
I think the very center of that is like you're surviving off the land, right? Whereas we're not. We're here in the
state.
Yeah, we're in this urban environment. But I mean, I've heard some nations still hold on to their coming of age ceremonies, but it's on their land, and it's very closed. Very closed.
Well, what about here in LA? Have you seen, or do we have examples of you know, people here in Los Angeles doing some kind of
there's some attempts to create what they call the Shilonen ceremonies, I think, but that's mostly through Nahuatl and only of maybe one dude that I know that is currently attempting to make something like that for both the females and the males in this group of danza. But other than that, I mean, I think that the only other option that I can see is maybe like with some of the young men that have gone up on the hill.
That's what I was gonna say.
That the Hamblecha,
I'm good.
You know, and that's when you go up on the hill. We ask permission of one of the, some of these nations that still, you know, they have their reservations, and if we can use some of their land to go up on the hill and just stay out there. We don't move from this place. 4 days, 4 nights, no water, no food. You're just there with your thoughts, you know, and your pipe, because this, you know. So this ceremony, though, we call it Hamblecha in the Lakota tradition, but it is a practice that was done, from what I understand, all across the continent. You know, it wasn't just specific to that. It just so happens that this way is what has been presented to us, and that, you know, so,
everybody had their variation of it.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I would like to add that Malinalco, and they would go into the temple to fast. The warriors, the jaguar and eagle warriors, they would go in there to fast, you know, and that was like their kind of like initiation into warriorhood, you know,
Initiation,
like
exactly.
to start that, you know, like actually it wasn't the initiation, it was more like the commemoration, I think, because I think the initiation started in the Telpochcali, you know, where they were kids and they were learning their craft, you know. What are you good at? Are you gonna be a tlacuilo? Are you gonna be a, you know, like, you know, whatever, you know, like whatever your role was that you excelled in, that's where they kind of like drove you, you know, which is in our schools, they're not trying to do that. They're just trying to like follow orders, you know, like, like it's like this and follow and do as I say,
Cookie
you know?
cut. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cookie cutter.
Yeah.
This mass production of students.
Where are we at on time?
We got 30 right there.
Oh,
9:33.
Do y'all feel like somehow sports has taken up a role in being a coming of age or a rites of passage for youth?
for some people, I think you know, that's gonna vary from household to household. Definitely, like you know, if your dad was like Al Bundy and fucking played for Pokai, you know what I mean? Yeah. Then you're gonna want to live up to that. And you're gonna want to live, you know, and play for Pokai too. And so in a way, there is a little bit of that in sports. I think it varies depending on like on the household and what the values of the household were. You know, for some it might be like more martial arts kind of based. You know, that's kind of you know, a little more closer to like, you know, my expectation with Yao, right? With my son, is that he learns and has become very proficient in martial arts, as opposed to like sports not as important, you know, for us. So I think, you know, it definitely varies. You know, if your dad was in a hockey, was like the only person in East LA that played hockey. You know? Oh, that was you? That was you?
Yeah, he did play. He played roller hockey.
You know, like, yeah, you know, you might want to, you know, that might be your way of, you know, a modern coming of
Coincidence?
age. You know?
Well, let me add to that, because being from that background,
From a hockey,
not just hockey. So sports is really a big deal in my family.
Oh, okay.
All of us are very athletic. Even my big ass wasn't this big all my life. The biggest one, and I think for my dad, and I'm speaking on behalf of him. I mean, I could be wrong, but he didn't have my grandfather was in and out of his life. So he didn't really have much of a father figure, other than maybe my uncles and stuff that were sometimes there and whatnot. My grandma was like, since she was a single mom, she was constantly working her ass off. So he was a latchkey kid. So the one thing that he fell in love with was football. That was number one. You know, I think that's where he did get to experience the things that you were just saying right now. That you know, camaraderie, the brotherhoodship, like
The glory.
yeah, the glory. You know, there's like little things here and there that you do that's like, wow, like, you know, it makes you feel like this accomplishment that you and a group of other men, you know, inflicted your will on another group of men multiple times throughout the year, and you know, there's some type
Came
of
out victorious.
there's some gratification.
Doesn't feel
there.
so good when you're the one.
When you get your ass kicked. No, but see, and that's the part of coming of age, and I think it's unfortunate that the youth right now are not experiencing like how it was back in the day. They can't handle loss. I mean, I watch like my nephew play a video game and he gets his ass kicked and he's just fucking furious, and I'm just like, dude, like somebody has to lose. You know? Somebody has to lose. Like, not everybody gets to win. But
unless you're Hickson. Hickson wins every time.
I'm sure he believes somebody has to lose.
Like, but it ain't gonna be me. So that was the one thing, and you know, my pops didn't win anything in his football career, at least to my knowledge.
Okay.
But because of that, he ended up playing other sports, hockey being one of them. He was definitely always. Yeah, he used to wrestle in high school, so that was yes, he definitely wrestled. He was actually pretty decent. I really, honestly, going into high school, I was so looking forward to wrestling, and like I find out that there is no more wrestling at Wilson.
There is now.
Oh yeah, I heard that they started up again, but it was kind of cool though, because when we were playing football, our weight room was the original wrestling room, and it was kind of cool to be like, man, my dad used to actually like wrestle here. Well, I'm pumping iron where my dad used to wrestle, like, damn. And I'm just like, damn, I wish I could do that. I was lucky enough to my freshman year. So that's the other thing too. So let me rewind a little bit. My dad, feeling the way he did about football, put me and my brothers through football, and I did see the positives and whatnot. And as going into Pop Warner and then eventually to high school, my freshman year, I did get to go to a private school called Bishop Amant, which is a pretty big D1 high school, especially football, specifically to play ball. I even had to crazy shit, but I'm the first person since like the 70s that had long hair there. I actually had a right to the Archdiocese of Los Angeles just to allow me to be there with long hair because of my indigenous heritage. And it was because like I want to play ball for you guys. That's why I'm here. That's the only reason. Fuck the religion. I'll do your schooling, but I'm here to play ball. And that freshman year, my team won the championship in freshman football. So like that, like right off the bat in high school, you know, going to D1, beating another D1 league full of like the best of the best, like the cream of the crop.
The teams that are on TV every Friday.
Right.
Of all the hundreds of schools.
Yeah, these ones
are
on TV. And we won. So that was kind of crazy.
You experienced the glory.
I see, yeah. So that was like, holy shit. That's kind of like a coming of age. Unfortunately, on the racism tip, the head coach of the varsity team moved the entire offensive lineup to varsity for their playoffs. And that's a big deal because that means you were that good that they need you as test dummies for the bigger kids, the ones that are, you know, in juniors and seniors. And mind you, I was like, not to sound conceited, but I was the second best lineman on the line. I was starting left guard, which means you're on the weak side of the quarterback, which means you're the better lineman. Mm-hmm. You always the stronger linemen are always blocking the blind side of the quarterback. And he didn't move me up. And the reason why he didn't was because and I've heard him say it, is that I refuse to allow a long hair on my football team.
Dang.
Yeah. So fuck Bishop Amant. And that's why I went to LA. I went to play with my people because fuck them. And to be honest, football.
The losing team.
No, actually, we had some glory there.
Glory.
We did get the bell back in like fucking 10 years. Yeah, so that was. There's like this bell that
you didn't hear it all? It was front page news.
Yeah. So Franklin High School and
who the fuck reads the newspaper?
The fucking LA city. That was like town news. So you know, what I did get to see though in that process, which was kind of like an eye opener type of deal, was I definitely got to see like the negative aspects of football. I got to see how a lot of these fucking rich kids conducted themselves off the field. And like we had this kind of hit last time, you know, the just how accepted it was. You know, this one kid, a dude from East LA. He was actually my family actually happened to know his family by chance. The coaches had told us, do not enter the varsity locker room. They kind of told us it's free for all in there if you do. And I don't know why he went in there. I think somebody threw his cleat in there or something, and he had to go fetch it. But he was a tough East Los kid, you know, a fucking tough ass Mexican, and he went in there to go get his shit, and they beat the shit out of him. I mean, they hit him with some cleats, like they hit him in the face with cleats, and they beat his ass, and
simply because he wasn't on the varsity.
Because he wasn't on the varsity team. And that's like
varsity only.
Yeah, and that's just like the stupidest shit. And what was crazy about that is the coaches
condoned it.
Super condoned.
They're the ones who started.
They're the ones. Yeah, that's a continued culture that they're proud to fucking represent. And that's some bullshit. Even at that age, you know, as a 14-year-old, I was like, what the? This is wrong. This is fucking wrong.
A bunch of pieces of shit.
Yeah, and then they had gotten another kid and they locked him in a locker for like almost half the practice. So like shit like that, I'm like, dude, this is shit I see on TV. Like it's like not real, but they're still fucking doing it in, you know, this day and age. I'm just like, what the fuck? And yeah, so like that made me really turned off by football. I took the good from it, and I definitely, you know, there's little aspects of it here and there that I use in my life, but ultimately, it's like, damn, there's some negative shit that people are learning and calling it manhood and calling it, you know, coming of age.
It's like the type of behavior that I was displaying with my little brother that
right.
doing a bus checked, you know, like
right. Yeah, that's like, oh, it's tough love, and it's all right to beat the shit out of your little brothers, and like that type of shit is not okay, and it, you know, it's good that we all fucking recognize that now, and I ain't teaching my kids to do that, you know, like my kids aren't allowed to hit each other.
Mine are.
I mean, don't get me wrong. In a proper setting, if they're training, if they're at the gym, yes, of course, my kids do that. But yeah, so it's one of the cool things though I will real quick hit on was rugby. Complete opposite of that.
Oh, really?
Rugby, and I could thank you for that. Two Ravens, you know, he took the plunge into rugby first, and yeah, I was interested. It's a European sport, unfortunately, but the cool thing is the Islanders dominated. So fuck yeah, you know. But one of the things that I really liked about it was a camaraderie, even amongst the opposing teams. One of the things that we would do is have socials, and at the end of every game, the home team would go chill with would take the away team to a spot and treat them to alcohol and food. And you sing songs.
Sing songs together.
Yeah, and it's a fucking party after, and
everybody's friends.
And the community, it's just like a community of like, oh, we're so happy, and when they play, it's really like awesome and fun, and then like there's like little crazy like when you score a try, like I had to drink. At the time I was a minor, so I had to drink water out of my cleat that I fucking wore all.
Did it shoey?
Yeah,
did it shoey?
Yeah, and that's like a little coming of age kind of thing when you score your first try playing rugby, and I got to do that. So, you know, he's done it, and everybody I know, you know, so that's a positive thing, and yeah.
I think another key point about rugby at the time that we played it. Which I really enjoyed about it the most was that it was bereft of the jock culture of football. Everyone that was playing rugby at that time, I don't think it's the same. It's the same now, but at that time, rugby in LA was, at least the teams that I played on, was populated by like the outcasts, by like the oddball kids, the black sheep of kids that were shunned away.
Didn't make the cut of football.
Would come and play rugby, and we all kind of had like this little bond with each other that like, oh yeah, we're not all jocks here, and we can be unique, and we don't have these fucking varsity
bullshit
jock culture that, you know, like a lot of the character of the people off the field on the football team wasn't being reflected with the people who found rugby to play, you know, and at the time I really appreciated that because it's like, oh, you know, you don't have the rugby players at the time didn't put on this like persona of like every single one of us is an alpha male. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it was cool to like be chill and like yourself, you know, and rugby was a good outlet, you know. for me at least, and like it wasn't like I was excited to go to rugby practice.
So was
I hated going to football practice. I was like,
as did I.
damn, I don't want to go to football
hated
practice. You know, like, so yeah, that's it.
Yeah, you brought up how it's dominated by Islander people.
Yeah.
And like how everybody gets together and stuff like that. Community, right? So there's another group out there that's trying to bring back like these traditions of coming of age, and the way it was explained to me was that like in a sense, yeah, it's for the child too, but it's for the community to let them know that, hey, this individual is becoming a man, and there's a process in there where the community helps raise him, you know. And if he's fucking up, the community's gonna tell him, hey, don't do that, you know, don't do that, because, you know, like they have every right to check you, you know, because you're a community, and the parents have, you know, accepted that, like, hey, this is our child, this is the, you know, this is like, help us raise him, you know, kind of say. I don't want to say that that's our child, but like
it takes a village approach.
Yes,
to raise a
so
child.
literally,
Yes.
literally.
And so like, you know, like I was saying, you know, like if that child is messing up by the, you know,
Standards
by
of
their
the
standards of the community, you know, they're gonna let it be known, and the parents are gonna be okay with, hey, like, hey, that guy told me something, or what would you do, you know, like what you do, you know, like they already know, you know. So like, I think that's one important thing too, that you know, we should try to bring back, because when it comes to like the issue of accountability, is like who are you accountable to, you know, like where's your community, you know, where are the people that you surround yourself with, you know, and where do they stand in all this, you know. So
Just as you're saying that, it just comes down to like, you know, a rites of passage process is also showing the individual who he's accountable to, right? And you know, I think, you know, for the most part, in its own, you know, twisted way, because it has a lot of different self-destructive elements to it, but in its core essence, you know, the neighborhoods carry that because it's generational, right? It's you're accountable to the neighborhood, but it just you know, as we've seen, the neighborhoods have changed so much just from in my lifetime, you know, since the 80s to today, and so there's a lot of, you know, the negative parts of it are being exploited, you know, and the kids are getting caught up, you know. But if we focus on the constructive elements or the communal elements of those little societies, you know, for them to, they're not just accountable to, you know, the members of the neighborhood, but also the families of the members of the neighborhood, to also, you know, the surrounding neighbors who may not have members in the neighborhood. You're also accountable to them, you know. You also have a responsibility to take care of them, right, in the neighborhood, and ensure that they feel safe, ensure that they're taken care of, you know. And so I think, you know, that's what a rites of passage does for the individual. You know, the women have theirs and the males had theirs, and it was obviously like with today's world, how do you do that, right? How do you incorporate traditional processes in a way in today's world where, you know, we're not out there hunting, you know,
where it's relevant.
So I mean, we can still go do those things because we actually can go and hunt, right? But now it's like sport, you know, and it's like, so you know, it's like trying to piece together and make it relevant today, to see how, you know, how we can give these young men some purpose, because I think that's what it did. It gave the young man purpose in life. That's what these coming of age ceremonies did. So, you know, it's I mean, I never went through anything until I was in my 30s, and I was through Hamblecha. You know, it gave me purpose, and you know, and then there's another level of that, you know. So But I wish I would have gone through that when I was young. I mean, I was also in football, but I didn't experience some of that, that stuff. But I did miss out 2 years. I played when I was freshman and I played when I was a senior, so I didn't really get too much.
Thanks for the follow. Sorry.
Get too much playing time, but that is where that is, though, to tell you the truth, it was my involvement in football that my nickname Lucas came from.
Yeah, a lot of that happens.
That's where my community name Lucas comes from.
Originates
from when I joined football and as a freshman, and I walked in and I had my helmet. And I had to put on my glasses after I put on my helmet, and I was right there and then one of the fools was like, "Hey, look, it's the Mexican Lucas from the movie." And then so to this day I refuse to watch that movie.
Annexation of Puerto Rico.
So I was like, but it just sooner I was in one of those summer youth programs work. And there was one dude from school and one dude from the neighborhood from where I grew up, and then they were talking like, "Hey, who's Lucas?" "Oh, that's him. And we call him Lucas." So I was like, he goes back to the neighborhood. It's like, "Hey, let's call this fool Lucas." And it's like,
and it just stuck.
And that was it.
Yeah. For me, I guess my so-called my coming of age probably would be like the California Youth Authority. You know what I mean? Like hitting the Y. And looking back at like my Uncle Johnny. You know what I mean? And his experiences and all the dudes from the neighborhood that like came before me, and all of them and hearing all of their jailhouse war stories and shit, that experience was in for my youth, was that putting things into perspective. That's where I kind of let go of a lot of my self-destructive behavior. That's where I made it a point to try and be like of service to my community and to be like to try, what I mean, to try to be the best version of me that I can be. Was in those circumstances and under that hardship.
But you also got introduced to the lodge in there.
Yeah, I did find ceremony in there. And then other people that were like Arlie Steele, who was super influential in like, in driving me toward a more indigenous based, identity. I remember meeting him. It was funny. He comes. He's like, "Hey, you're native," and I'm like, "Yeah." And there's not that many natives. Like our car is super small, and he goes, "Hey, we got sweat this weekend." And I gave him like this, like, "Huh?" And he looked at me like, "You don't know what sweat lodge is?" And I was like, "Nah, what's that?" And he gave me this most pitiful fucking look on his face. I swear to God, like he was like I can't, but like he looked at me. He was like, "What kind of Indian are you?" You know what I'm saying? Yeah. What kind of Indian are you? And it was just like the pity in his eyes, like I'm gonna have to. Hey, and he was an Apache too. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that was my my experience and my coming of age. And it's an experience that
Thanks for the follow.
I hope our youth never have to follow in that path. I don't even think they have the youth authority anymore, which is probably a good thing. But you want to do some closing thoughts or anything like?
I want to say, that to touch on everything everybody said, I want to really take the time to appreciate each and every one of y'all, in terms of like taking your time with me. I know that, like you said, it takes a village, and for a long time I was bereft of that. A lot of people, especially who would be potential father figures in my life, never took the time to really teach me the values in a lot of different things. And I find myself at 30-something years old asking myself questions that I should have been asking a long time ago, and I find myself being confronted with a lot of my mistakes, and like y'all taking the time to hear me out and to listen to me and and to do it so much as to like give your time. You know, like in my opinion, time is the most precious thing we have. You know what I mean? And like I know that I've disrespected a lot of people's time, and I'm not bereft of shame for that. You know what I mean? In spite of these things, there are a very small handful of people that are still willing to give me their time because they believe in me and they know and understand a lot of the things that I've been through. And y'all are the community that I'm accountable to. You all are the community that I look to help check me and raise me and do those things. You know what I mean? And I didn't have that before. You know, I had it with Red Hawk, and I've disrespected him and disappointed him too. You know, and you know, obviously I'm not perfect, but you know, I'm here and willing to like do the work and willing to say that, yeah, I'm not perfect. And yeah, I've made mistakes and been disrespectful and I appreciate y'all, you know, like y'all are not willing to just do this under any circumstance. You know, you do it with me privately, you know, and we're here doing it publicly, you know, on a forum that is all can bear witness to, you know, and it's like that says a lot. It says a lot about your character more than mine, in my opinion. You know what I mean? It says a lot about what you're willing to do and who you're willing to do it in front of, and to have something public, regardless of who thinks what about it. Like, you're still here and able to do it, and I want to reciprocate that for y'all as well. And it's not just everybody here that's on the table. It's everybody back behind doing the producing. It's everybody in the other room that's here supporting. It's my family. It's people who love me and people that I recognize that my actions have brought harm to. You know, I'm not gonna disregard that, but I'm also not gonna sit back and allow myself to be ridiculed by people who don't know me. You know, people who had the ability to sit and give me their opinion and try to help me understand what they understand, and they didn't understand it. So what can they help me understand if they don't understand it themselves? You know, so of all the people whom I've sat in fires with, a very small handful of people actually reached out to make sure those things were happening. And for those who spend their time to do that and give me that example, right? Because it's really hard to be something you don't have an example of. And folks have a very small group of folks. 2% of all the people who sat in fire with me actually, you know, reach out to the point where we can have this dialogue and check in to see what progress was made. And for all the people who do that privately, I appreciate y'all, let alone those who are willing to do it publicly. You know, and I'm appreciative of that example in and of itself. I'm looking forward to exploring a lot of these ideas and growing myself and helping y'all, all of us, become better men and to find the standards that we want. You know, like the journey I had explained earlier. Like, I thought there was a standard, and it turned out there was something else, and I had to do away with that and find this new thing. And if we don't sit down and talk about that privately, publicly, to discuss these ideas amongst ourselves, then what growing is there to do? You know what I mean? Like, we gotta discuss it. We gotta confront each other with it. We gotta challenge each other. And that's what I'm willing to do here with y'all, publicly and privately. And, you know, I appreciate y'all, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. Shout out to Red Feather and Leonard Crow Dog.
It's the Men's Circle, y'all. Hope you enjoyed. Peace.
Yo, we'll see you guys next week, probably.
In the words of Leonard Crow Dog, get in touch with the universe of the universe of the universe.
Oh.
Deep universe.
If you know, you know.